Hi, everyone joining us. We're going to wait a few minutes while, not a few minutes, we're going to wait a minute while more participants join.
Let's see, looks like Josh has joined, Lindsay's joined, Robert's joined. Kevin, GW. Nice, there should be about 50 people here today. Excited for this. Kimberly, Leap. Denise. Yeah, everyone's rolling in. It's good. Really, really good.
All right. We'll start the intro and dive right in. And those joining us later, I'll include everything I'm about to say in the chat. So hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar session, Double Your Student Engagement with Half the Time and Effort. This webinar is hosted by StartupTree, the leading platform used by top universities and institutions, and the best way to manage and grow your entrepreneurial program at scale. So a recorded version of this webinar will be available to everyone who's registered for the event, along with a copy of the slide deck and additional resources relating to the topic. As we dive into this session, we'd love to hear from you. So we have a dedicated 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A at the end of the session, but please feel free to send questions through the question and answer box throughout the webinar. I'll try my best to answer them or have them answered live. We'll also have a few stop points for quick polls. And for those of you just joining us, welcome. I'll send everything I just mentioned again in the chat. But for now, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, James Bottom. James has become an expert in developing university startup ecosystems. As a former founder trying to build his venture out of graduate school, he quickly realized that most universities needed better co-curricular programming. He has spent the last decade on working to improve access to resources for individuals trying to build their startups and creating an investment syndicate to increase access to capital. He has helped thousands of founders begin their entrepreneurial journey, and he is just getting started. Take it away, James.
Thanks, Hulda. Really appreciate being able to go join you guys today. I'm extremely excited to go be working with all you all today and talking about how we can go double your student engagement with about half the time. So the quick agenda of what we're doing, a little bit of ecosystem mapping. I really think that innovation is a box of spare parts, and you're going to find that if we can go dig around your center, a lot of the assets that you have access to your fingertips are going to be able to go help you increase your reach. I think in terms of a content engagement, we are going to help you find ways to go automate your content pipeline, so we can essentially have a small team of people that can actually help you go continue to produce content. And we're going to actually really dive into how big your team needs to be, because you can actually run it with a very lean team. We're also going to teach you on terms of understanding your audience. So you continue to have people tuning into what you want to go do, or to what your content, the content that your audience wants to receive, and then some of the main takeaways. And of course, the 15 minutes of Q&A there at the end. Okay, so let's dive into the Innovation Supply Depot. So as I mentioned, I really think that innovation is a box of spare parts. You have a ton of spare parts sitting around your various centers, but we just have to figure out ways that you can make those actionable. So the most basic thing that we can really do is in terms of newsletters and your distribution list. So hopefully all of you are being able to go pull class rosters, departmental curriculum emails, essentially what you can actually go do for just the things that you have around your academic centers. You can also pull in some of your partner lists if you have really good partners that allow you to go do that. But one of the things that most individuals don't do is they haven't taken their lists out. So have you exported all your contacts out of LinkedIn? Have you taken all your contacts out of your Google contacts? And not just for you, but for your whole team. So one of the things that you can do to kind of growth hack your first few thousand contacts is take some of these easy lists that you can build yourself, and make sure that these are actually getting put into your CRM instances. So, but it's not just for you. You need to be able to go do it for a network dump for everyone on your team, and sanitize any extremely personal contacts so they're not in there. But for the most part, if you've been working as a director in a center for a fairly long time, the normal interactions that you're actually doing through just the normal course of work can be captured by a lot of these systems. and you want to be able to go start generating an email list so you can get it out there. I think the goal for most of you, even if you're just starting a program, is to really try and get to 10,000 emails as quickly as you can. Okay, so let's talk about that. So we're going to do a quick poll question here. How big is your actual distribution list? I want everyone to be honest. We got about 50 people here today. 50 people registered, 24 actually attending. So we're going to give it about 30 seconds here to kind of go figure out how big your list is. I'm guessing that most people are somewhere in the middle, Hulda. Is it giving you updates for how many people have actually done it?
Yeah, I'll close the poll in 10 seconds after most people have voted. Right now we got 75% voted.
Awesome.
All right, I'm gonna end the poll right about now, and you guys can see all these results.
Awesome. Well, this webinar is for you, for half the audience that polled into under 1,000 subscribers. And all right, this is good. So the proof is in the pudding about what I was doing at my previous institution. We were able to have our email distribution list to be over 65,000 active subscribers every single week that was tuning into the content. So if you take to heart some of the lessons that we're going to be teaching you in this webinar, you should be able to go easily get up to a higher number of subscribers. So yeah, we had over 100,000 people in our CRM list and over 65,000 active people reading the content. So let's talk about that. So it's not just, I believe the newsletter should be the #1 thing that you should be working on. As a matter of fact, if you were turning into the the email that StartupTree gave this past week, I think it was Sam. Was it Sam? Gave some really good tips on how to be able to go provide the right type of event strategy for promotion and getting people to actually attend events. But I really believe in a newsletter first philosophy, because that's the consistent thing that is going to be delivered into people's inbox. But you always have to do some of the extra social media activities as well. And I really have to go question like how often you're promoting. And so what's the channels, what's the content, and what's the mediums in which you're going to push. So Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn are probably going to be your best best channels for actually communicating. One of the challenges can be, it's like it becomes a chore, or it can become problematic to be able to go posting all the time. If you're shorthanded and you have essentially student workers or anyone on your team that has trouble posting content on a consistent time frame, I would really suggest trying to use a social media syndication tool like a Hootsuite to be able to go have multiple content channels that can be filmed. So it's every piece of content that you're going to be putting could be put on multiple channels to go increase engagement, to see where people go there. I will say this, I think that LinkedIn is a really underrated way of trying to increase the people that are subscribing to your content. LinkedIn isn't particularly great for having the best content. So if you're authoring original content, which we'll teach you how to do later in here, and the types of content that you can put on there, it can easily get picked up into your subscribers' feeds and be pushed into theirs, just based on some of the things that we're going to do. So, but again, the goal is to use one piece of content that's used across multiple platforms to go just make sure that you're continuing to go fulfill those pipelines. Okay. In addition to that, I would challenge you to actually find the influencers on your own distribution list. Have you gone through and done the analysis of the people that have the highest level of social media followings within your particular center? And more importantly, have you communicated with them and then found easy ways to be able to go arm them with information so they can push it to their audiences? So a lot of times, if you'll find that some of your biggest supporters don't have any qualms about pushing the content from your particular center into their distribution feeds. And I would recommend being able to go create a list of 24 people, either via email or like an MMS text message, that if you're going to be pushing original content to them, say, hey, we have a big event that's coming up. We'd really like you to push it to your networks early. So creating that influencer list of people that are in your particular ecosystem makes a lot of sense, because this is just going to expand your reach. And again, with social media, it's really kind of the tip of the spear with the communications. And again, it's hard to do fairly well. Okay, so let's talk about some content engagement strategies. If you have a really small center, it can be challenging to get the right type of content that people want, right? And so if you're a small team and you can't do all the events yourself, one of the easiest things that I do is just essentially sign up for all of the various logical newsletters out there, from either ones from your school, the SBDCs or the regional networks around you, investor networks, VCs, angels, relevant newsletters. All of these can help find the right types of content that you should be putting in either your social media feeds or especially your newsletters. But what usually happens is you yourself as the director will go out and sign up for all these newsletters, and then sometimes you'll just go ahead and have you'll be either sending all that content to members of your team to try and put it in the newsletter. One of the better recommendations early is to actually sign up a newsletter with your center name. Like, so you would have a common inbox that all the members of your team, specifically either the social media people or your events team members, can actually put that into some kind of CMS. And this makes a lot of sense because the worst thing you can do is actually silo the information that's coming through. You want everyone to be able to go look through content that's coming through in a consistent format, and then being able to go quickly scan what's coming through those newsletters to be able to put in. And a lot of times, your goal is to become the influencer, to become the most knowledgeable program center in your particular area that's providing this information. And we can do it in a couple of different ways. So again, I would recommend either creating a student worker for your organization that is actually essentially monitoring this inbox. And sometimes it can be better if they're the ones that are actually writing the newsletter, because they're getting a feel for what the subscribers are actually tuning into. And this becomes really important, because I want you to be able to start analyzing the numbers of the click-throughs, but basically how long your subscriber list is, what's the click-through, and what's the type of content that's putting on there. Okay, so let's talk about metrics here real quick. So y'all know that the number one article in any particular newsletter is going to be the thing that is most clicked on, and that's normal. Unfortunately, the second most clicked on thing is usually the unsubscribe button. There's always a delicate balance of trying to be able to go continually add new subscribers through doing events, adding other distribution lists where possible, and the number of unsubscribes that are coming up. There's always going to be a churn, but if you're providing the right types of content, you're going to end up not only increasing subscribers, but you're going to create a self-improving data loop. And we'll talk a little bit more about, we can talk about that. So if you have to just go analyze the types of people that are coming into that are tuning into a newsletter, in this case, a lot of students want jobs. Jobs are usually the third most clicked on thing in the newsletter. And what inevitably what happens is jobs is usually one of the things that I intentionally bury very far down in my newsletter, because the longer you go into a newsletter, it depends how long you can make it. Usually you're looking for just a couple stories per category, and we'll talk about some of the big bulk categories that you want to go do for your particular programs. But jobs, if you can have some fresh jobs that are in there, I guarantee you have, like me, a number of students that are actually, a number of partners, maybe they're alumni, maybe they're other outside organizations that have good jobs available for students that are probably resume worthy. These aren't the jobs that are just, manning the front desk at, the library or a particular other center on campus. These are the resume worthy jobs that your students are going to want. So putting those in your newsletter makes a lot of sense. And, hopefully, if you're using some type of a CMS content management system like a StartupTree, this type of content is going to go in, basically work as a click-through strategy to drag people into your digital community. One of the other last things that I would just mention is, I wonder how many of your newsletters at the top underneath your center logo, how many of those have some kind of statement that are getting people to sign up for their newsletter when it's being forwarded by a friend, right? So it's like, hey, there's this really cool event that's coming in. I'm going to go send it to these 5 people because I want them to be able to go attend with me. you can give yourself an additional call option on getting that person to actually subscribe if you have a hook at the top of the newsletter that's going to find them to go do that. And by the way, hold it. If there's any questions that are coming through the chat, feel free to just interrupt me, jump in. And I guess this is a good opportunity to really say, I want this to be as interactive as possible. So can we find a way to ask questions? We'll go there. All right. So next. Okay. So I think this is our next poll question here. I want to figure out how often you're reviewing your digital metrics. This includes newsletter, social media, Slack, Google, a CMS platform like StartupTree, or another digital community. I think those are all really good things to review. I have a sneaking suspicion you will review all of those at some point, but you're not reviewing them all together. And I think even less of you are actually tracking. So as we're so obviously kind of go in, I'll answer the poll question, but if in the chat, does anybody want to talk about how often that they're actually reviewing these metrics with their team members? And it could be multiple team members. How are we doing on the number of people that have voted, Hulda?
We're on about 50% have voted, so I'll leave it up for another 15 seconds.
Let's see, I'm going to see if I can't quickly review the chat.
We're seeing a lot of once a semester, monthly, and weekly.
Gotcha. Can you provide some info on? Oh, Kimberly, to answer your question, it wasn't a webinar. The content that I was talking about, Sam, was in a newsletter that StartupTree pushed out to one of their distribution lists that I'm on.
Yeah, I can send I will send the link to that interview. That will be included in the follow-up email. It's called How to Drive Turnout. Oh, it's how to consistently get 80 plus RSVPs to your events. And
No
I'll
problem,
send
Kim.
that in a moment. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna share the results.
Cool. Wow. Once a semester. Okay.
A lot of monthly and weeklies. And
yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, that's really, really good. Once a year, never. Okay. Well, for the never have I ever folks, I would highly recommend looking at those metrics, because it becomes really important. Like we would review certainly our newsletter metrics every single week, and we were putting those in a spreadsheet where we were tracking our subscribers up and down over time, just to make sure that we're trending in the right direction. The other thing that I would recommend is for tracking the types of content that is doing really well is you don't know the unexpected outliers. So for instance, when we were checking our newsletter, we found that jobs was the third most clicked on thing all the time. But that was unusual because jobs was the last section of our newsletter. It was really, 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 really far down there. And so we'll talk about some of the content categories, but you also want to know, this also helps you kind of pre-plan the types of content that you need to be fishing for within your own community, because this is the type of content that they want, right? Every community is going to be different. They're all going to have their own little quirks in terms of like what they actually like subscribing. So if you are in the never once a year, once a semester, I really implore / encourage you to build just a Google Sheet or whatever your tracking is that your team members can do to try and start plugging this information in over time. And Hulda, thanks for posting that link on the in the chat for the same interview. All right, so let's talk about ecosystem programming. So I kind of mentioned that you don't have to do it all yourself. If you're doing a good job of reviewing those metrics, you're going to find the content that your audience likes to consume. And this is the types of programming that you're going to want to put in your newsletter. And we're going to go talk a little bit more about the content categories here, but like it's really about trying to amplify the numbers of people that are actually participating in your events. And as you'll find in the SAM interview, and kind of one of the things that we actually did in this webinar, we did I believe it was a week out, day before, day of. Is that what it was? In terms of like sending notification reminders to go increase the number of people. So if you're producing any type of event, but not doing the notification portions of it going up into the programming that you're actually pushing, you're leaving some people some people that would have attended or remembered to attend aren't, just because they certainly weren't giving a reminder. I find that the younger generation isn't as great about putting things on their calendars. They probably should. Some of them are still, well, it is what it is. So, but let's talk about the external and internal partners content. So when we were doing our newsletter, we were organizing our content into events, opportunities, news, discussions, and jobs. So first of all, you're probably going, well, what's the difference between an event and an opportunity? It's a very good question for all those in the audience. An event is something passive. You're going to attend. It's going to be a bigger event that you're going to be essentially sitting there and consuming content. An opportunity is something that's active. These are going to be the things that you're going to participate in: a pitch competition, an application. You're going to be we're requesting something. And usually I find for the largest events that we run, opportunities and events kind of go hand in hand. So I'll give you, for instance, if you're doing a demo day where you have a pitch competition that's actually in it, you might have an application for the companies that are actually want to actually exhibit there. So you might write an application for startups to actually participate, and then you might write a different pitch competition, and those would happen about 4 to 6 weeks out before a major event, maybe a little bit longer depending on what it is. But if I'm doing an event and I'm looking for just attendees that are passively going to be attending an event, the bulk of the registrations are going to come about 2 weeks before. So it really helps understand the cadence and the timeline of like when you should actually be promoting content to your particular audiences, because, you know, for the most part, you know, they're going to end up being there about 2 weeks before. Okay. I think having a startup news network or a function of putting that into your newsletter is extremely important, because it helps you author original content. And I think this is going to be really important. One of the fun facts that I have here is I challenge you to name a university newspaper that actually has a business section. Actually, in the chat, does any of your particular universities have a business section in your student newspaper? And on the flip side of that, can you name a major newspaper in America that doesn't have a business section? Feel free to plug that in the comments, but it's this little nugget of wisdom. Leap says theirs does not. It's this little nugget of wisdom that allows you to tap into a content stream. No, twice. Got it. So again, not in your student newspaper, not a major business one. Got it. Okay. So this is your best asset to being able to, or this is your best insight to being able to go author original content for your community. This is the type of content that gets into a lot of, this is the type of content that allows you to get a lot of click-throughs and just original content. This is the thing that people want to talk about on social media. This is the content that's going to end up coming through in your newsletter. So one of the sections that I always wanted to put in, but within my previous institutional newsletter, but didn't, was a discussion tab. I think in the last year, Hulda can probably know this better than me, the forum functionality of StartupTree was completely revamped and made better. And so when we had people that were, you know, coming in and asking, hey, can I find a co-founder? That's a function of StartupTree that you can use. Can I find this talent? Can I find someone that can help me do a Kickstarter? Can I help me do insert buzz name of thing, right? I find that if you can highlight some of those key discussions that are going to further the engagement within your community and hopefully have people coming in doing it, I think that's a good thing. Now, StartupTree will actually do some notifications on discussions, but highlighting the really important ones that you think are going to end up contributing to that self-improving data loop that I talked about before. I think that becomes a wonderful opportunity. And so we kind of already talked about jobs and the types of jobs that you should be putting in there and burying it kind of far down in the newsletter, because students are going to go there anyway because they dearly want to get paid. So what's interesting about the newsletter is if you've set up your organization with student workers and everyone else that you kind of want or need to go communicate with, almost all of the types of content that should be going into a reoccurring newsletter on whatever frequency that you're pushing your newsletter can be coming from StartupTree. So events, opportunities, discussions, and jobs can all be pulled from a CMS like StartupTree. News, we can talk about. I'm going to briefly gloss over that in a second, but if you're doing this right, you're almost setting yourself up to be able to go automate this. And the other thing I will say to this is, no one can actually predict what a good newsletter was for what's a good newsletter frequency. In some cases, I know some centers that were doing it semesterly. I think that was way too little. I think some people that were doing it monthly is still too little. When I started our program, we were doing it every 2 weeks. And then we realized that we had so much content, meaning like several dozen stories every 2 weeks, that we had to actually start pushing it weekly, where we'd have new and fresh original content for about every single week. I would suggest the frequency in which you push a newsletter should be directly proportional to the types and how good your content is, or how well your content is performing after you review the metrics. So if you're doing a good job of pulling content from partners, if you're starting to do a bunch of events yourself, increase the distribution rate, distribution frequency of your newsletter, and that's going to help you. That's going to help you along the way. Okay, so let's talk about. I'm not going to spend too much time here with news, but if that insight that you had about your newspaper not having a business section, these are the types of stories that aren't being pushed. I guarantee you probably will do any or all of these news stories infrequently. I would suggest systematizing it, where you are doing these things on a regular cadence and trying to go put this type of original programming content on your website. So right now, StartupTree doesn't have any news function or a blog functionality in it. Most of the centers that I know already have an existing blog, or they're going to be posting on Medium. But a lot of these story formats can be very rinse and repeat. I highly suggest trying to go find a student worker that's going to end up trying to go help on these. So, I mean, for instance, if I had to ask you, if you were looking for a student volunteer in trying to go help you do this, how many stories do they need to publish to become the #1 most published author in their school? I'm guessing it's a paltry handful, less than a dozen. So if they're going and creating a founder spotlight, mentor spotlight, something every single week, they're going to be the most published author in their particular community. And Holden and I were actually having a conversation about this week as we were putting it together, that there was a student at a particular university that got, their post got amplified by Medium as like the preferred entrepreneurial post of the week.
They got sent out in the Medium newsletter as a top writer in entrepreneurial writing, and she was just a student at my school.
Good opportunity to go join an actual tech newsroom if that's something that they're interested in. The other thing about news I'll just mention is that this is an excellent way to go give an asymmetric SEO boost to your startups and to their founders. The fact that you would be giving them a .edu backlink to their startup is a huge boost. Not only to that, you can also do that for their Crunchbase profiles, their LinkedIn profiles. So if you're really good at embedding hyperlinks into the stories that you're doing, those high quality backlinks are going to pay enormous dividends for you and your program in the future. But I digress. All right, so how big does your team need to be here? So for better or worse, I was one of the only paid staff members. We started with more Launchpad personnel earlier in our program, and then it kind of went to just me and about half a dozen to a dozen paid student workers and about 24 volunteers. You can run the playbook that I'm trying to help you put together with very few people. And I like to train people for the repeatable processes and KPIs that they should be doing. So those KPIs can kind of come from a variety of sources, but I like to think of a startup ecosystem as like running like a chronometer. In some cases, your chronometer might be broken, but an ecosystem is going to run like a watch. I really believe that the small wheels turn big wheels. So if you're looking through the types of content that you should be putting in there into a CMS, into your newsletter, it's going to come from a variety of sources like this: startups, co-working, pitch competitions, and Those are going to be some of the bigger ones. Jobs, mentorship opportunities, faculty and staff profiles. Every one of these is going to be turning these smaller wheels. When I was at my previous institution, we had all of these other programs that we were communicating with rather frequently. And this is the types of stuff that we were actually out there trying to go pull in to our particular communities. So if you're going through and looking at, as you're analyzing these particular functions within your ecosystem and trying to go systematize the content that you're doing, assuming that that content that you're getting and trying to automate is putting into a CMS where your entire digital community can look at it, it makes a lot of sense. This is how you get really, really, really good engagement with your, not only with your audience from your newsletters and social media, but then you're putting them into a digital community where they can start communicating with themselves. All too frequently, I found that I was, without having a really robust CMS like StartupTree, you will end up increasingly become the bottleneck. People ask you for jobs. People ask you for how to get into the best competitions. You have your founders that are asking for free money. If you're doing your job right, you're taking yourself out of the equation. All the content, you're leaving it in this digital ecosystem where you can kind of go, where they can go find it for themselves. Okay, so really quick, let's ask the big question. How big or small is your center staff that participates in these activities? And hopefully you don't find yourself in a situation like me. I had a joking relationship with with another center director that we were always constantly trying to go boast about how few people we had to actually go pay to help us run our programs, which I imagine that y'all are probably in the same boat. So if you have any help that's of any other help, that would be good. And I guess for the polling question, excluding yourself, how many people do you have participating in these activities? So that's how you could get the very big, huge number of 0. Hold on, how are we doing on the number of people that have taken it?
Yeah, we have a huge, big majority at the 1 to 3 right now. I'm going to wait another 10 seconds for everyone to pull in, but it's looking very skewed towards 1 to 3.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
1 to 3. All right, half. I would say that's about normal. And I'm assuming these are paid staff members, call them adults in the room, whatever you want to call it. That makes sense. So but you had a couple of people that actually had 0. So for those of you that are in the 0 and 1 to 3, which is a majority of it, this next section is going to really help you kind of identify how lean you can really be. Okay, so let's talk about being able to go augment your student roles. One, I'm a big believer in, if you have good repeatable training processes for your students, that's well documented, the systems that they should be using, you should be able to go use student roles to be able to go help the ongoing content and digital operations of your center. The challenge is training and how often that they would end up rotating out of your particular programs. I was really, really, really good at finding first or second semester freshmen or first semester sophomores to join our program, in which they would kind of learn by osmosis for their first semester, first few weeks. And I would pair them with some of the other people that I had trained. I had spent an enormous amount of time training. This is a wonderful way that you can augment let's say the help that you're getting for your particular program. But I challenge this. The best student workers are going to have very, very little time. The other focus point is you just have to understand that they should only be managing a single KPI, and we'll get to that in the next slide. So the key roles that I think if I had this list of 1 through 9 is prioritized in the way that I would try and find a way to pick student rules that make sense. So if you don't have events and opportunities and someone that's helping you plug this stuff into StartupTree, it can be challenging. So in the content pipeline, if you're taking all this content from all of these other various sources, it needs to be collated into a system where people can do it. That is a manual activity that takes a little bit of time to be able to go put it in. and you would need something that you're put into your newsletter, right? So if your newsletter was just events and opportunities, that's a huge win. You're giving people, access to cool events. Not all of them have to be yours. As a matter of fact, if and when you are a small program, a majority of the content that you're pushing out there will likely not be original authored content. The best programs are going to be pulling in content that makes sense for their community. And that newsletter position should be able to go pull things from like a CMS, like StartupTree or whatever else you have, to put that into your newsletter. And if I had to go prioritize, that next role would be a jobs coordinator. Jobs gets founders to want to go put jobs on your platform, participants that want to go ahead and tune into your newsletters so they can find a way to go get paid. And then hopefully, if you're doing it right, it keeps going in a virtuous cycle. Next, I would find that a web designer or developer that is helping you build some lasting testimonials to the major events that you're doing becomes a really good thing. Like, for instance, we were able to go get Mark Cuban to go speak at our previous institution. And we had some wonderful big name speakers like Gary Vaynerchuk. And we were constantly trying to be able to go build web pages that had a lasting testimonial to this great entrepreneurial event that is actually happening. One of the easier ways that you can do that is actually just a news recap of that story. I find that all too often that if you're doing a really big event, whether it be a pitch competition, a demo day, or whatever, the write-up of what happens afterwards is almost equally as important as all the work that you did before. The challenge that we have as directors is we're not really designating anyone to be able to go write that or to be able to go create that lasting testimonial. All right. So, and then because we're kind of falling behind here a little bit, the other thing I would just say that it's like your best student workers are going to have a major programming activity. So if you're a programming coordinator, the biggest event that they're going to do is a demo day. Jobs coordinator, you want them to do a startup career fair, and we can talk about that more on. And if you have just a data coordinator, I really like annual censuses to help you growth hack the amount of people that are on your list. So if we had to just prioritize your programming, your newsletter, and your jobs coordinator, you're basically looking for 3 to 5 pieces of new and original content every single week. And so if I had 3 different student workers that are working somewhere between 3 to 5 hours a week, the types of content that I want them putting in is events and opportunities, someone taking the stuff that's in your CMS from like the events, opportunities, and jobs perspective, and then putting that into the newsletter. If you had to only prioritize 3 student workers working 15 hours a week, I would really, 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 really recommend doing that. So let's talk about events and programming. So let's say you had an events or opportunities coordinator. These are a lot of the typical event formats that you're going to go out there and see. StartupTree allows you to go put all of these, or most CMSs allow you to put all of these on a particular system. These are the things that are going in your newsletter. These are the things these are the types of news that your students can actually go ahead and write about prior to it. And so I think all of those are really good formats. And if you need help producing any of those, StartupTree has existing format templates that can help you think through these. So if you don't have all of these formats in your particular ecosystem, some of the templates in StartupTree can actually help with this. Okay. So if I had to go, if I'm implementing a brand new CMS with essentially no other pre-existing content, the first thing I'm going to launch is a startup career fair. I've helped some of my friends that run other entrepreneurship centers in Northern California and now Southern California here launch a platform like StartupTree using just a startup career fair. So a startup career fair allows you to go ahead and get your founders to go give you jobs. It allows you to put those jobs in front of your students and alumni to potentially say like, hey, maybe I'm hiring too. Can I get some people in there? So if you're doing a startup career fair, there's a really easy rinse and repeat format in which how you can go promote it. The technology platform that you should be using, we ended up using Run the World. Most of you guys have probably used what is it? What am I thinking? Hopin, which is the British company. Sometimes the Hopin can feel like it's a bit overkill based on the number of, like, setting up Hopin can be really challenging. Run the World is just a little bit lighter. So if you want some ideas on how you can actually easily implement the some of the back-end systems to be able to do a career fair paired with the CMS. This is helping you get to an alpha load of content that you need for your system just to be successful. I hope that all makes sense, because it's really easy to go do. And I will say this, if you think about your normal career fairs that you're getting, and let's say you have like, let's say bigger Fortune 500 company, I won't name names, but most of those corporations will be going to dozens of schools. And if you're a startup, you might only be going to one school. So let's say you have several hundred jobs for the bigger corporation. Those jobs are going to be divvied up amongst 4 dozen, and you have thousands of students that are competing for those jobs at 4 dozen institutions, versus you have a handful of students, maybe several dozen, that are going to be tried to be picked up for 1 or 2 student roles in there. You have an asymmetric chance of getting hired at a startup career fair as opposed to the other one. Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit of doing a write-up or some kind of event after the event. It's really after the event that where you can help yourself do some, essentially get some better help for your systems. So do those write-ups. It becomes new. Your old events end up becoming a new piece of news in your newsletter section. And the other thing that you have to do is you got to make sure that you're taking all of those lists that you're getting from those actual events and plugging it into your CRM to help your newsletter being able to go try and increase that reach and distribution. So again, doing the event is really the hard one, but then making sure that you're assigning or helping people create those long-term assets is good. Okay, so a quick poll question here, because I know we're getting kind of towards the end and I want to leave some more time for Q&A. So would you rather have 1 to 2 40-hour-a-week staff members, or a dozen student workers giving 3 to 5 hours a week? This is going to be I have no idea. This is what's so exciting. I have no idea what you guys are going to put. That's why I think this is just a fascinating question.
This is an interesting one. The thoughts are kind of split right now.
All right. And if you want to go through, and let's wrap it up and put your final one in there, because I want to give a solid 15 minutes of Q&A here.
All right. Here we are.
Wow, a majority of people would actually, makes me so the minority. Respect. Okay, interesting. When running a very robust ecosystem, I find that if I had 1 or 2 people that were helping me full time, they would still be completely overwhelmed by the amount of tasks I'm asking them to do, as opposed to being hyper focused and doing essentially finding the KPIs that I need to do for my student workers. Okay, good. It's like 2/3. It's almost exactly 2/3. Leap says I'm living that right now. Okay, so okay, quick summary here. Okay, so the main takeaways I think is like, running your ecosystem at scale can be really challenging. You have to find ways to systematize it. The best thing that you can do early is growth hack your distribution lists. You can do that through pulling those contacts from your personal Gmail contacts, LinkedIn, etc. Finding a way to go automate that content pipeline by signing up for all those newsletters, putting it into a single departmental email inbox that all your team can actually go through and access. Leveraging the KPIs of your student workers where they're doing just one thing and you're monitoring them on the one activity that they need to do. There are several different types of self-improving data loops that you can do, that where you should be thinking about the outputs of any given activity should be the new inputs to another activity. And then finally, you can really do this very lean methodology that I'm talking about with just 1 or 2 people, and then having a playbook for extremely repeatable processes. So with that, I think, Hulda, we'll kick it back to you.
All right. So for our on-demand listeners, this will be the conclusion of the webinar today. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll hope you'll tune into another soon. Kicking it back.
All right.
To James.
Okay. So again, if you're interested in trying to take any kind of action whatsoever, here's the first things that you can do. You can sign up for a meeting with me. I love meeting with people. I love chatting with other entrepreneurship directors, because there are some, oh, thank you. Hold it, put those links in there. Saying that super valuable. Well, I'm glad it was super valuable for you. I think it's look, I've been in your position. I have had to learn how to go architect a program with just me and just the most basic help possible. And it doesn't seem possible that, you know, one individual in the basement of one of the oldest buildings on campuses could have the largest single weekly distribution list in the school. But if you do these things right, you will potentially have more subscribers than your actual overall big newsletters that come out on an infrequent basis. You will have more people tuning in to the content that you're producing weekly than the school can get their people to go click in through and consume on a monthly or semi-regular basis. And of course, I really can't encourage you enough to take a meeting with StartupTree to see how they can help you in your particular ecosystem, looking how you can implement a CMS for the different types of activities that are going in there. You'll probably most likely be meeting with Teresa, who's the president of StartupTree. So getting a little bit of white glove, handheld experience, getting here to go help your particular systems. And then with that, I think let's just open it up to Q&A. So I have hopefully you found it as useful as some of the other folks have already posted in the chat. But you know, please ask your questions. Hold on, can we have the ability to like highlight people and pull them on stage, or you know, actually have a face-to-face discussion instead of like this this Clubhouse feel?
Yeah. So if anyone has any question and answer, we can answer it live. So if you even if you don't want to write out the entire question, you can just write question into the Q&A and I can invite you onto the stage.
Yeah, come on. How many people are still in right now? Okay, yeah, we have about, you know, almost, what is that, 80% of the people that started? Cool. All right. I guess I could dazzle people with some of the other event content things that we threw. Hold on, you got something?
Sunny has a question. Let's
Sunny.
see.
Oh, maybe I'm in the chat. There's probably a QA tab as opposed to, there you go.
Wait, let me see. Oh, wait. That might have been a misstep on my part. Sunny, I'm sorry. I thought that I'd be able to invite you on stage, but that.
Hey, Sunny, can you answer that? Can you pop that one again? It's saying this question has been answered.
That is entirely on my learning how to use Zoom webinars standpoint.
So Aubrey asked, does StartupTree have a newsletter or plans to have a newsletter that is sent natively through the platform through all the universities? I think that's.
Yeah, Teresa answered that question, but Sunny, I'm going to give you permission to speak if that works.
Hey, Sunny.
There we go.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We got you, man.
How's it going?
Awesome. Well, great presentation. Really appreciated it. So my main question is that we can't hire multiple student workers, but we were considering creating a student org and having it be like a club on campus that would work with us. Do you have any suggestions there or experience there with kind of how you would organize that student organization and make it worth their while without paying them?
Absolutely. So we did that frequently at my previous institution. One of the reasons why it forced us to do it is that I found that student clubs get preferred rates in booking our large venues on campus. Like they don't have to pay a lot of the overages and other fees. So when we were doing our demo day that 1,000 people would attend, you know, the amount of cost that was going in that from a room and programming, like audio visual, table rentals, etc., we were trying to keep that around $5,000. So the fact that it was a small miracle that we could host an event for 1,000 people, a well-produced event for about $5,000, really gets you down to doing that. So I think student organizations are a good way to go do that. Just in terms of like governance models in general for the university, I imagine that all of you have some kind of corporate board, leadership board that happens with corporations or other alumni of the center. How many of your programs have set up a student organization council, et cetera, the leads of all of those student organizations that you want their direct input and types of the programming that you should do all the time? So Sunny, do you have, I mean, creating those student organizations or just trying to go find some of those leaders that you can work with is a really good thing. The other thing that I found is that I had so many inbound requests of people that wanted to do content and programming with us, but we didn't have enough staff members to do it. So in some case, I would get a big name speaker like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company that was interested in coming to go work with us. And I found that was coming right on the heels of another major event that we had. I was basically giving that event to a student organization to host it, where they were doing a lot of the grunt work of what they needed to do for like setting up the actual infrastructure and logistics of the event, but it is their event. And because I knew it was happening and we were helping do the logistics, all of this got thrown through the same normal content pipeline that we would do for a bigger event. It wasn't our event, but it was supported by the activities that we were doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Makes a lot of sense. So you work with kind of existing student orgs rather than creating your own student org and kind of partner with them on their events.
Yeah, and just think of it. You're giving them resume worthy activity. It's like, hey, we had a student at one point that did a private sit down dinner with Elon Musk. It was the craziest thing I ever saw.
Wow.
And the other thing was, no faculty or staff were allowed to go to that dinner. Not even myself. I was helping put on the event, and that I didn't even go to it because it was their event and we respected their privacy because they were able to go get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in really quickly just because I think I have a little bit of perspective on this particular question. At my university, all of the entrepreneurial programming was run by the student org. We had about, I guess in this perspective, student workers, but it was just a club with an entire hierarchy of about like 25 different students that had people focused on marketing, people focused on programming, and we had speakers like the founder of Quizlet and all these crazy things that were just put on by students. So I say that if you have the drive and ambition to create a student org to put on these activities that your university isn't, it is completely doable.
Yeah, well, for context, we have like 2 organizations that are entrepreneurial and student run, and they do very little, I think, just because they're student run and they don't really have the leadership. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're having conversations about kind of bringing that in-house into the entrepreneurship center and making like allocating our time to leading that student org. And so, yeah, I think definitely this whole presentation kind of made me feel like that was definitely the right way to go.
Perfect. Any other questions or help that you need for your particular institution? Or and hold on, well, I'll chat with Sunny if you want to try and drag anyone else on stage. But Sunny, like, what else do you need help with?
So right now we're only a few years old, our entrepreneurship center at the Illinois Institute of Technology, and our big focus right now is our accelerator program. So our goal is to have 15 student startups come out of our accelerator program at the end of the year. And we're really, it's hard to kind of find those 15 teams because a lot of students don't have startup ideas. They don't really know a lot about entrepreneurship. And so we're trying to find ways to kind of inspire and motivate students to get started. So not very specific question, but I guess any advice for inspiring students that aren't already working on startups?
It's funny, Sunny, that's the very first thing that I'm doing at my new university, at the University of Laverne here in Southern California. Our entrepreneurship center is a couple of months old. So I'm stepping into a completely new center that basically has some draft concepts, not even a mission statement. And I'm really excited about this because I've never built a center from scratch before. And this one's going to be externally focused. So excited for this. But anyway, the question I have for you is, I believe entrepreneurs are made, not born. So the fact that they don't have those ideas, there's some ways that you can go do it. I've spoken with who was it? Dan at Wake Forest. He has a really interesting ideate method that I would recommend checking out. And also, I'm a big believer of lean stack, Ash's philosophies on how you're trying to go pull and do it. So lean stack is an absolutely fantastic way to go do that. I find that if you are arming students with you're helping bracket the ideas of how big their idea needs to be. So in our case, when I was running helping run my venture studio, is the ideas that they're putting forward have to be a $10 million revenue company 3 years from now. And then the question is, how do you plug in the number of transactions you need to do, monthly reoccurring subscriptions over that time period to make sure that the ramp up period of what it's going to take to get to become a $10 million company. I find that we don't enforce the denominations of like what we are hoping students will actually do in terms of the size of the company that they want. Because as you guys know, running a business that's even doing $1 million a year can go pretty fast. So trying to figure out ways that we're having enough activity go do there. And Sonny, if you want help consulting on any of that going through, I'm happy to help. Take one of the meetings with the take one of the meetings. I think my calendar link got posted in the chat there.
Yeah, for sure, I will. Yeah, I'll look into those ideate method and lead stack and see that, because I think one of our big ideas is helping students with idea generation. And right now, the way we do that is very open-ended. And I feel like it leaves a lot of the responsibility on them. And so some more structure may be able to help them.
Yeah. And again, I'm happy to go look at it and then offer personal introductions to some of the folks that will get back to you immediately.
Cool. Well, really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Sonny. Appreciate it. All right. Hulda, do we have any other questions? Any other people that want to be dragged on stage?
Yeah, this is a complete open floor right now. So if anyone has a question, just feel free either to raise your hand. Oh, Kimberly Meyer. Give me one moment and I will bring you on stage. All right.
Hey, Kim.
This has been great.
Okay.
Really,
Thank you.
Really helpful. And we've got a new center that we're still sort of in the soft launch. We're calling it Phase here at University of Texas at Arlington. The Center for Entrepreneurship and Economic Innovation. So we're trying to line up programming and do other things. And we're really excited to start using StartupTree. So this has been phenomenal.
Kim, I know a lot of the Texas schools ended up becoming Launchpad campuses. Did a Launchpad campus come to your campus, or are you part of the Launchpad network in any way, shape, or form?
We are not.
So Kim, yeah. So the Blackstone Charitable Foundation in Texas.
Yes. I'm very well aware of all of it. So, and I don't want to talk about it here.
Okay, fair enough.
In open forum. But okay. I do want to say something to the last person, Sonny, who was commenting about trying to drive student teams into their accelerator. I just wanted to give a word of advice. So one of the things that we did here, because we had a number of flagship programs in advance of starting the Center for Entrepreneurship and Economic Innovation. And one of the things that we did was break our business plan competition into 2 phases, so that after the first phase, the student teams can win a small amount of money, and they can win a larger amount of money after the second phase. But to compete, to be eligible for the second phase of the competition, they have to go through the accelerator. Mm-hmm. And it's a 7 to 8 week summer accelerator program that we run with a partner. We subsidize the student teams participating in that. And we have 13 teams running through that accelerator this summer. So it was almost an instantaneous get the students involved. So I wanted to throw that out there, that if you do it in 2 phases and make it a requirement that they participate in the accelerator to win money, that can be really helpful.
That is actually a really interesting idea, because our accelerator is a spring course. And so if towards the end of the fall semester, we had kind of one big pitch competition that it culminated in, I feel like that would be a great kind of funnel into the accelerator. Yeah,
it worked out well for us.
Hey, Kimberly, did you ever connect with anyone from Capital Factory?
Yes, we're connected to Capital Factory.
Okay. I like Brian Chambers down there. Nice guy. And it feels like he helps a lot of people.
We have a really great ecosystem down here in Texas, and it's one of the things that we're trying to tap into even more, and help make sure that we're all connecting the dots. And I think that's something that everyone in our ecosystem is realizing too, that we need to be aware of what everybody else is doing.
I just have this philosophy that the most important piece of software in any organization, regardless of what it is one that's used by everyone. And I find, if let's say you were to go adopt a CMS like StartupTree, if you had multiple institutions that were all on the same platform, being able to go pull in all the fields that you need for copying, cloning, doing events across a variety of the different programs in Texas or with your other peer institutions would be, much easier if you guys were all leveraging the same technology on the back end.
That's why we're pushing for it. We really are. You read my mind. That's what we've been working on for the last 1.5 years, honestly, is trying to get everyone in the ecosystem, and with all of the different consortia that we're putting together here in Texas, to try and get us all on the same page and using the same software and recognizing the added value and the sort of power in being able to do that. So
yeah, and Kimberly, I know that Teresa's probably going to follow up with you, but they have network pricing for like trying to get large number of networks on using the system at the same time, using StartupTree at the same time. So I highly encourage you to obviously follow up with them. But any other questions that I can help with, is helping you jumpstart your ecosystem?
Nope, this has been great. It's actually been really reassuring. I want to compliment you two for explaining to me a lot of, like, really clarifying some of the student roles, because I've been somewhat hesitant to involve students in this process, and I am much less so after an hour of listening to you describe all of the unique roles they can take. I'm really excited about getting the students involved.
So Kim, let me just leave you with one thing, and maybe I probably should have put this in the presentation at some point, but in order to pick the right student workers, I would frequently ask them like what their future career ambition is, and making sure that we could tailor the role of what they were going to be doing in our program to be applicable to their future career experience. So if they wanted to be a VC, I try and put them in maybe either on the event side or our opportunities, or so basically there's a variety of roles to get in VC. It's either you have to have a ton of network connections and relationships, or you're really deep in a particular area. So we're trying to go figure out ways to go do that. Frequently the let's call it the curation process for our student workers were the individuals that were coming out of these rather exceptional student organizations. They had already proved themselves reliable, and trying to figure out ways that we can essentially we can see like some of the pre-work that they had done. Or I was taking people that were so young that they had no idea what they were doing, and I had gotten somewhat good about giving what had been a 5-page executive overview of what our whole center does in terms of the operations and how all of these roles fit into it. I like to think of it as an operations playbook for this. And so frequently, if I had people that had no idea what they wanted to do, they would go through and look at the types of jobs and the activities that they're doing. And if I can essentially figure out what their future career ambitions were and the stuff that we had there, and marry those two things together, they would be extremely enthusiastic and dedicated student workers, where I don't have to, once you give them the basic parameters and monitor the KPIs, they're off and running. But like, I will suggest that it's not just anyone that you can just pull into a role. It has to be someone that's going to end up being driven to want to go be excellent at what they're doing.
I appreciate that. And I also appreciated the comments that you made about really making sure that you've got a playbook and you're training them really well. That's something that we'll put some effort into at the front end here to make sure that we've got everything as clear cut as we can for student workers. I mean, that was terrific advice.
Yeah, it's really not fair to the student workers where you're putting them at the front of the house in the center and making them manage the phones when they don't know what's going on behind them. You take it for granted that you've been there for a very long time and have absorbed through osmosis like how all the operations, not of just your center, but how the whole school works. And so it's very unfair to have someone that is ill prepared at the front not know enough what's going actually on there. So yeah, playbooks are good, but then also seeing how that they can actually get involved in the actual planning of events, so they can see how it is. Again, it's really about active participation for those people, and you want to be able to go make the training as repeatable as possible. Thanks, Kim. Anyway, Kim, anything else? Sonny, anything else? Anyone else that wants to come on stage?
If that's all, we'll be wrapping up our webinar here. I'll be sending out an email with the deck, with the recording and additional resources, including the blog post with Sam about driving turnout to events, as well as some other resources. Thank you everyone so much for coming, and we hope that you learned something new today.
Sounds good. And Kim,